I still have a picture from a long, long time ago. It's a picture of a Christmas pageant held at the first Korean church in Calgary. It was in a place called Richmond. If you know Calgary, it's Richmond. Anyway, there on the front of the whole church, which had been turned into a stage for the Christmas pageant, a number of young children are standing, and some are dressed up as sheep, some are dressed up as wise men, some have the appropriate bathrobes on. We've got the towels on the heads, you've got the hockey sticks masquerading as shepherd staffs. And off to the right, he's a slightly older kid, a little taller than the rest. He's probably about 13 or 14 years old, and instead of a bathrobe, he's wearing a shiny blue choir gown. And on his head, there's this cardboard crown full of jewels. It's Herod. It was me. And I have this picture somewhere. It's before the digital age, so it's stored somewhere in an album which I couldn't find. It's my last role in any Christmas pageant that I can remember. I don't remember a lot from that pageant, but what I do know is that the role of Herod was limited to receiving the three wise men, or magi, as we would later learn to call them, and asking the magi that when they found the location of where the King of the Jews would be born, that they would come back and tell me, so that I might go and worship him as well. I know for certain that none of my lines included an order to kill all the children in and around Bethlehem that were 2 years of age or younger. A line like that probably would have ruined the entire atmosphere of the Christmas pageant. Most of our pageants, as I said to the kids, end up with the magi at the manger. As inaccurate as that may be, surrounded by all the shepherds and all of the animals and all of the angels. But we know that the story doesn't end there, right? The story does not end there. And when we don't take time to hear the entire story, we run the risk of not getting the story right. The rest of the story, in this case, is nothing at all like the stories that we come to expect around Christmas. Because we know that the Magi, they don't return to Herod. They're warned in a dream by an angel, and so they go home by a different road. Then an angel appears to Joseph, warning him what Herod would do, telling him to take Mary and Jesus and flee to Egypt until further notice. And when Herod discovers that the Magi have tricked him, he flies into a rage, into a murderous rage, ordering the murder of the children. How many were killed because of Herod's fury? We don't know. We can't say. But the words of the gospel are plain as they are poignant. A voice was heard in Ramah, wailing in loud lamentation. Rachel weeping for her children, she refuses to be consoled because they are no more. But this is not the same Herod who put John the Baptist to death and took part in the conviction of Jesus. That would be one of the sons of this Herod. This Herod was called Herod the Great. During his rule, Herod the Great collaborated very, very closely with the Roman occupiers, and eventually he was given rule over the entire territory of the Jews. He became known as the King of the Jews. King of the Jews. History notes that Herod was actually quite a prolific builder, including building additions to the temple in Jerusalem known as Herod's Court. History also notes that he was a particularly brutal tyrant. He had his favorite wife executed, as well as a brother-in-law. He had 3 of his sons put to death because he feared that they wanted his throne. It was remarked by historians that it would have been better to have been Herod's pig than to have been Herod's son. So why bring up this brutal tyrant a mere few days after Christmas? I think we've all heard the plea, put Christ back in Christmas. Heard this? Let's put Christ back in Christmas. I'm not really sure that Christ has been left out of Christmas as much as some people might tend to think. Christ is in Christmas. He used to quote another phrase, the reason for the season. But I wonder if we start getting a little too one-dimensional with catchphrases like this that miss the larger point. Maybe the plea should be, put Herod back in Christmas. Put Herod back in Christmas. Not the Herod that says to the Magi, listen, when you go and find him, when you come and tell me so that I can go and worship him, but rather the Herod that flies off the handle in a blind rage when they don't, and orders the massacre of the innocents in Bethlehem. The reason for the season isn't just that Jesus is born in a stable surrounded by a chorus of angels, cattle lowing, generous wise men. The reason is that he's born into a world of violence, chaos, terror, and tyranny. Put Herod back in Christmas because without him, without what he represents, we don't get the fullness of the reason for the season, the fullness of what the birth of Christ means for the world. Christmas is not the good news of great joy that will make everything easy, that will make everything okay. That's not what it is. Knowing what we know about Christmas, when we desentimentalize it, that Mary is a young, poor, pregnant woman at high risk, not married, that silent Joseph tries to do the right thing by quietly leaving Mary, leaving this woman who was suddenly pregnant by who knows, but instead he gets visited by an angel in a dream who tells him to do the unthinkable, to marry his fiancée, whom he hardly knows, who bears a child of uncertain origin, to commit his future and his life to a promise that he can't be sure of what to make of. Christmas is so very, very unlike what we often portray it to be. It's a story of people having to make do without a whole lot of means, right? Who end up having to give birth out back because they couldn't get a room. Who live under the oppression of a ruling power that isn't the least interested in their welfare. This is the broader context of Christmas. This is the world into which God sends God's only Son to be born. Really, this is the reason for the season, not only so that the world can sing joy to the world, but so that we might understand why the world should rejoice. The truth of the matter is that there is evil in our world, whether it's evil represented by the likes of a Herod, or by any force or by any power that seeks to destroy or deny, oppress or kill or abuse the life that God intends for God's creation, the life that God loves so much. The reason for the season is that God's light has entered into our world's darkness, and that the darkness will not overcome it. But it doesn't mean that the darkness has fully vanished, at least not yet. Not yet. This past Christmas, we read about the horrible murders of two young sisters in Old Bay, 6 years old and 4 years old. Their father is charged with their deaths. Back in Calgary, a newborn young girl was found dead behind a dumpster on Christmas Eve, apparently left there to die, having just been delivered. The mother has yet to be found. Who can ignore the seemingly ever-expanding circle of powerful men being accused almost daily now of sexual assault, harassment, or just plain, really, really poor judgment? The darkness has not yet vanished. I wonder if Jesus were to be born in Vancouver this year, to two young, unmarried, financially struggling, homeless people, how he would have fared. If Jesus were born here under the same socioeconomic and political conditions that he faced in Bethlehem, what kind of life could he have looked forward to? What happens to a child today born into poverty, to a single mother, perhaps to a family of refugees, into a homeless family here in Vancouver, here in Richmond? What happens to them? Why is Herod a part of the Christmas story? Because he's our reminder that we cannot afford to ignore the dark realities of our world. He's our warning that if we don't hear the whole story, we'll get the story wrong. The whole story is that the birth of Jesus made the world an even more dangerous place. The birth of Jesus made the world an even more dangerous place because that's the response of evil to the hope that Jesus represents. Herod tries to wipe out the birth of hope before it can even get a foothold. but he won't succeed. He won't succeed because the light shines in the darkness. And the darkness did not overcome it. Christmas is about God's light in Jesus Christ coming into the darkness of our world and bringing God's promise, hope, and healing to those who have been victimized by the Herods of any age, by whatever it is that the Herods of this age may represent. Christmas is about God coming into the midst of our conflict, into the midst of our wars, into the heart of those relationships that are breaking down and creating innocent victims, coming into the hub of our societal and cultural madness, where the insatiable greed for wealth creates such vast inequality, where the lust for power and control damages far too many vulnerable people, where the most needy in our midst too often fall through the cracks of our overloaded social systems. Christmas is about God coming to stand in solidarity with those who grieve, those who suffer, those who fear, those who are victimized, those who are unsure of what's coming or what to do next. We've got to prepare it back on Christmas. Because without Him in the picture, the manger is a little too cozy and everything's a little too safe. That's not our reality. Not now. It wasn't that way in Jesus' world. It's not that way in our world today either, is it? Suffering, sadness, tyranny, threat, even death. These are part of the Christmas story, and they have to be. They have to be. Because without these things, the birth of Jesus doesn't make sense. Jesus isn't born into a world that's doing pretty well all right? He's not born into a world that's, hey, we're fine. Thanks for coming, Jesus. You're just adding to our goodness. It's because the world is broken that Jesus is our Savior, that Jesus is our Messiah. That's the real reason for the season. There's a lot of darkness in our world, but God's light has come. And the good news is that it will not be overcome. But that one day the darkness will be. One day the darkness will be. One day we will know that God's presence in Jesus isn't just being there for our dark moments, but that God continues to work in history to bring about the world that God desires. Remember, history is on the move. It's not just a big repeating cycle. It's headed somewhere. It's headed to God's desired end. Christmas is about living as people who know this truth, that we're headed somewhere. We're headed to someone. Christmas is about being a people who won't close our eyes to the reality of evil in our world, but also about being a people who know that God has done something about it. God has done something about it. And what God has started is irresistible and unstoppable. The South African freedom fighter Steve Biko once said, "Our task is not to bring about freedom. Our task is not to bring about freedom. Freedom is already coming. Our task is to prepare for the freedom that is already coming, and to live now as those who are set free. Our task is to prepare for the freedom that is already coming, and to live now as those who are already set free." So on this first Sunday of the new year, may our resolution be to live as a Christmas people. As a people who will not be blind to the realities that still cast so much shadow and so much shade in our world, who will not turn a blind eye or willfully ignore those who are struggling with pain, either emotionally, mentally, or spiritually, who will step up and speak up when we see incidents of injustice, discrimination, exploitation, or harassment. Maybe this year we will live as those who have been set free, who believe that we have been set free by what God has done for us in the gift of Jesus, who will not bow down in fear or to abusive power, who will confront the Herods of our time and place. Perhaps this will be the year where we, like the Magi, will move out of our places of security and comfort to follow a new thing. Something that might require a level of risk and vulnerability on our part. But something once we find it, or once it finds us, will lead us to worship and truly set us free. My friends, the light shines. The light shines in the darkness, and we are a people of that light. In the midst of a world that continues to believe that Herod is king, may the hope and joy of Christmas, may the light of God in Jesus Christ, may the freedom that we know in his love move us to live and act and bear witness to the one whose faithfulness is always great, who is truly and eternally our King this new year and forevermore. Thanks be to God. Amen.